I was going to say good morning, but good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here again and see all of my friends here in Turkey. As you know, I'm Marsha Powell. I represent Cotton Council International here in Turkey. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Every year for the last about 10 years, I've spoken to you about the world cotton market. This year, we're going to very briefly touch on that and then turn to the question of sustainability. In case you don't know, in the United States, there are 4 cotton organizations: the National Cotton Council, which is like a parent organization, Cotton Council International, the overseas marketing division, and 2 organizations, Cotton Incorporated and SUPIMA, who represent the cotton producers. Cotton Council International, we have 60 people around the world. I'm the lucky one living in Istanbul. And we also have a group of technical teams. So what do? We try to connect people. We work in the supply chain to link sellers of raw cotton with the spinning mills, with the fabric companies, dyeing and finishing, garment manufacturers, and the brands and retails. We tried to build the market for cotton. And you can see why. One of our previous speakers spoke about the growth in the man-made fiber market. And here in the blue bar, you can see how polyester specifically has grown enormously in the last 10, 20 years. Cotton is growing, but at a much slower pace. Of course, cotton is a natural substance. It's subject to the whims of Mother Nature. The world cotton production has been pretty steady for the last few years, which is good news. That means much more stable prices for the customers of cotton. This is a few statistics about last year's production and this year's production. We have more cotton in the world this year, and mills are using more cotton. Also good news. Our stocks are getting higher, and that's putting downward pressure on prices. Especially the stocks in China, we look at very closely because China holds the world's largest stocks. And when China's stocks go down, they must import more cotton. So we look at where those stocks are held. And as I said, the China stocks, when they go down, as they're shown here in the red bar, they've been shrinking the last few years. They were enormous 5 years ago. And again, that put pressure on cotton prices. So as China's stocks have been falling, that means they must import more cotton. China is a net importer of cotton. They produce cotton, but they don't produce enough. Very similar to Turkey. They must import cotton for their industry. But as I said, their stocks are falling. And what that means is they must import more cotton. This year, with the trade wars with the United States, our friend Mr. Trump, it's had an impact on cotton prices. So you can see the volatility, how cotton prices are reacting every time there is an announcement of a new trade war, a new tit-for-tat retaliation. And we feel it. We feel it. It's important in terms of the price of cotton, and it's important in terms of your supply base. As I said, China grows less cotton than it needs, so it must import about 1/3 of its requirement. And when these stocks that the government holds are reducing, that means they have to import more cotton. So a couple years ago, China was importing 1 million tons. Now we calculate they need 3 million tons. And when they buy 3 million tons, they're taking cotton supply away from the rest of the world. So the question is, where are they going to get it from? The United States is the largest exporter of cotton in the world. We account for about 38% of world trade. Brazil is now number 2, West Africa, India, and Australia. But some of those other countries have had problems this year with their production, whether it's pests or weather-related conditions. And that's going to present some challenges. The United States, we're producing more cotton, almost our record crop this year. Our mills are using about the same, and we expect to export more cotton. So we have plenty of cotton to supply. Cotton is grown in the United States in the Southern Belt, about 17 different states. And about 50% of the crop is grown in Texas. One interesting fact is that Texas, of course, they grow cotton in what they call rain-fed. They do not apply irrigated water. So when you can depend on rain for your cotton production supply, that means you watch the rain supply. On the left side, you can see last year there was a heavy drought in Texas. This year they had a lot of rain, some hurricanes, so the weather has been very helpful in making sure that the underground reservoirs for cotton water supply are full. That's helping our crop. So we expect exports this year to increase again. Turkey is also an importer of cotton. The US is the biggest supplier to the Turkish market for imported cotton. We supply probably about 2/3 of the cotton is grown in Turkey, and of the imported cotton, US is about 40 to 50%, depending on the year. Because we're such a reliable supplier, we call ourselves Cotton USA. It's the cotton the world trusts. One of the reasons customers trust us is because we have a very good track record in sustainability. And we recently set up a task force for sustainability, and they've set national goals. We're the only country that has set goals for our future. The last 35 years, we've been working on our sustainability platform. You can see land use is down, water usage is down 82%. Energy, greenhouse gases, and soil loss. All great news, but what about the future? We've set ourselves targets for the future to further reduce our footprint. What that means is that the size of the colored diamond pentagon in the middle, as that shrinks, our environmental impact is less. And our target for the future is the darker green color in the middle. How are we going to do that? We have new technologies, we are funding research, and we've introduced a new program this year called the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol. It is a voluntary program. It enrolls farmers. It's designed to support our 10-year goals. It started this year, and we're looking to enroll about 10% of our 18,000 farmers in the United States in the Trust Protocol. As I said, it's voluntary. They use an online tool, and they record all of their environmental footprint. So you get a lot of metric data to be able to calculate exactly what your sustainable footprint is. We expect it to be fully implemented next year. Its key principles, standards, measurability, verification, and to supply data throughout the supply chain. That means you can trust your supplier when they're using US cotton. We have a checklist of practices, as I said, an online field print data tool, and a continuous plan to improve the environmental footprint. Those best practices fall in 9 categories, whether it's soil, water usage, plant protection, harvest, even through the farmer-worker fairness, employment conditions. So it's quite rigorous. And for those 9 categories, they have to track 120 different measurements in that tool. So it's really quite exhaustive. We had a conference last week here in Turkey, and one of our US farmers participated. And he told us that he's been doing this for a long time, but now he's just writing it down and measuring it. And it helps him. It helps him because he lives on his farm, and he wants to leave it in better condition for his children. We have some other measurements. In case you don't know, every single bale of US cotton is graded by the US Department of Agriculture. And when it grades it, it classifies it. It puts a permanent bale tag on it. So that means you can trace every single bale of US cotton through the supply chain to the spinner and downstream. Our protocol includes farmer worker fairness requirements. That means fair wages, no forced labor, training, again, providing a safe working environment. As I said, we have annual measurement goals and annual measurement aggregate data, which we can use to show the efforts that have been made. We also have second-party assurance and third-party on-farm visits. Those are spontaneous, they're not announced in advance. You just might get a surprise visit one day. And it works. Have a lot of best practices, and again, the farmers are using this quite extensively. So we think it's an exciting step forward. We are concerned about this because we're also concerned about microfibers in the water system. It's one of the unintended consequences of doing your laundry. Every load of wash causes this fragment of fiber to break off the end of the fiber, and it goes into your water system. Some of that's filtered out, some of it's not. It's been in the news, and we think that that means that we have to pay more attention to it. I find this slide really sad because it shows you the intensity of the microplastic pollution around the world. And it's a little scary. Anybody who scuba dives, be careful. Yeah? And I think we're supposed to have a video here, so let's see if I can get to start. A lot of you in the room are designers, and you do have a choice. And I hope you remember that video the next time you choose your fabric. We also are part of a partnership for sustainable fabrics, and we encourage our customers to also participate. Finally, I'd like to just tell you briefly about another really exciting aspect of sustainability in U.S. cotton, and that's the traceability element of it. We know brands are asking, how can they verify this cotton comes from the United States? Even though we have bale takes, even though we can trace it back through contracts, etc. But now we're going a step further. We want to prove the origin of the raw material. So we have partnered with a company called Orta. It's a New Zealand-based company, and Orta has developed a technology where they take soil samples, and from that soil sample, they measure trace minerals and isotopes. And every soil sample is unique in this world. Whatever is grown there contains that footprint, that microscopic footprint. And anything that is grown in that place can be traced back to it using that database. It is an amazing thing. They have offices around the world, and in fact, on Friday morning, we have a big meeting here in Istanbul with their CEO. It's exciting. As I said, they take a soil sample, whatever is grown there, whether it's cotton, tomatoes, or the grass that feeds the sheep in the ground. That contains the footprint, fingerprint. It's like CSI forensics. You can trace it back, and whether it's yarn, fabric, or finished garment, any processing will not destroy that trace element fingerprint. Very exciting. This last year, we mapped about four of the United States where cotton is produced. Supima has already mapped all of theirs. This year, the sampling was so successful that we've gone ahead and we're mapping the rest of the US production. By the end of this year, end of 2019, 100% of cotton grown in the United States can be traced back to the field where it was grown. And it is so accurate, you can tell if it's grown here or in the next room. That's how accurate it is. I've already told you this. We've done a pilot study. It was so successful. It passed all tests, and we'll be finished mapping the whole crop by the end of this calendar year. So this gives you an idea of our key principles. We have standards. We have measurements. We can verify, and we can supply all this data throughout the supply chain to provide trusted cotton and fully traceable cotton. So thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Powell, thanks for your speech, and we will have a gift. And for the gift ceremony, hediye takdimi için değerli misafirlerimiz, bugün Türkiye Giyim Sanatçıları Derneği Yönetim Kurulu Başkan Yardımcısı Sayın Toygar Narbay'ı hediye takdimi için alkışlarınızla sahneye davet ediyorum. Konferansı, Türkiye, Orta, Avrupa ve Afrika program temsilcisi Marsha Powell deneyimlerini bizlerle paylaştılar. Sizleri biraz daha sağ tarafa alacağım fotoğraf çekim için. Miss Powell, Sayın Narbay, bir miktar daha sağ tarafa alacağım. Kuvvetli bir alkış alalım Miss Powell'ı ve Sayın Narbay'a. Değerli misafirlerimiz, şimdi 1 saat kadar